Welcome to Growing Your Firm, brought to you by Jetpack Workflow. We're here to help firms unlock the secrets to help you reach your goals faster. And now, here's your host, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow, David Cristello.
Hey everybody, David Cristello, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today we have a really special guest. It's Don Emery. He is the General Manager at Doc.It. He's been with Doc.It for over a decade before they were acquired by Iris in 2021. We're going to talk about the transition of going from a paper-based to a paperless practice, what that looks like, what he's seen over the last decade, what's been the same, what's changed. We're going to talk about the consolidation and suite build-out we're seeing across the industry, what it meant for Doc.It, and what it might mean for your firm as you see an acceleration in M&A. And we'll get into talent. We'll get into team management, we'll get into retention and so much more. But first, Don, I just wanted to say welcome to the show.
It's like, much privilege, pleasure to be here with you today.
Great, fantastic. Well, like I mentioned, you've been in the industry for a while. You've seen a bit of a roller coaster. You've seen a lot of change management go on. To kind of set the stage, over the last couple years, I guess help me understand what you've seen from the kind of the technology perspective. What's been going on from the talent market? What are you seeing on the front lines with the firms you're working with? Of course, we're seeing a lot of crunch on our end. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it still the same? What are you seeing in your community?
Looking at the employment market, there's a lot of people exiting out of the industry. I think I read something in February that in the States, 300,000 had left the industry in a 2-year period. Students aren't going into the industry as fast as they were back in the day. You know, becoming an accountant was maybe not a cool thing, but it was something that a lot of people aspired to. And it's not happening today. So you're getting this crunch of not as many people with client expectation, client needs growing. So they're kind of getting it on both sides. And it's a tough environment to be in.
Yeah, it's funny because on one hand, it's like, well, I've been hearing it ever since we got started. Profession's going away. Technology is going to displace every accountant forever. And then on the other hand, I hear this on one hand. On the other hand, I hear like, we literally cannot hire fast enough to meet the demand in our client base. And especially coming out of post-COVID and going into whatever environment you call this now, clients are demanding a lot more from firms. Is that what you're seeing?
Absolutely. The days of you do my bookkeeping or you do my tax return, I think are past. They want that advisor. They want that instrumental person to be there, not just I send you some paper and I get a piece of paper back.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you seeing as ways to start, without selling your firm and calling it a day, for people to stay competitive? What are they doing to attract talent, retain talent? What do you see working?
There's a few things there. On the one hand, they need productive tools. How do you put more through a pipe? Well, in one case, you can only put so much pressure on the pipe. Eventually, you need a bigger pipe. So the bigger pipe is technology, and that's going to allow more throughput. It was going to allow them to do more. The old adage, it's not necessarily working harder, it's working smarter. And you can only push so many hours a day into tax season and say, hey, we're going to do 20% more next year. Reality is you're not, because you're going to burn out. And that's why I think people leave the industry. So the tooling is so important because that's how people can be efficient. That's how they can be productive. Then you've got the time to focus on your client. Otherwise, you're just working.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think for a lot of firm owners, they feel the pressure you're talking about, which is like, oh my gosh, I want to get more out of the system. I don't have the financial bandwidth to hire. And I love the idea of, a bigger pipe, but where do I know where to start? What's the constraint? So how do you, how have you seen firms kind of unpack, like we should start with this part of the pipeline versus, a different part?
I think everybody's got a tax software. Nobody does tax returns by hand anymore. I think that went the way of the dodo bird probably 20 years ago. So there have been technological things. Then it becomes, okay, how do I bill easier? How do I get documents to my system easier? How do I integrate my software? There's a huge one. So much time and money is left on the floor because things aren't integrated. And so I have to take it, move it to point B, move it to another place, move it to another place. And every time I'm touching it, I'm losing. So I think stepping back and saying, where am I touching things that makes me work hard. What could I do that would make my job easier? And then you look for your technology tools that'll fit that. And
Yeah.
it's really not rocket science. If something can file a document away automatically and I don't have to do it manually, I've saved time. Now, sometimes it needs my expertise, but other times it's a rote function of repetition. Well, great. A computer's fantastic at that. Teach it, let it go.
Yeah, what I love about that, what I'm feeling right now is, okay, let's start with the admin work. Let's start with the non-value add, and certainly the non-billable. And if a firm owner is juggling, well, I could be doing document management. I could be thinking about billing. I could be thinking about project management. It's, at some point, if you can't decide, just pick one, right? Because it's just get the time back, and then,
Yep.
then you can compound them. If you're unsure kind of where to start, I'm sure you have a hint of where you're spending a lot of time you shouldn't be.
Sure. Don't look for a silver bullet. There's not, if I just do this, everything will change. No, because there's 500 things that you do, and therefore it's one layer, but each layer is the added productivity.
Yeah. So we'll go with many lead bullets over one silver bullet. I think we're in that world now. Now that there's a cost of capital and all those fun things, we'll go with the many lead bullets. So the other part of the equation, I think firms, and I understand why, because it is a shift, it is change, but it comes down to then, how do you think strategically about implementation and adoption? So we love the tool, we love the time savings. What do you see work well, or what are common traps when people start thinking about implementation and getting full value from a tool?
I think it's really important to take the services that are offered with that tool. We all learned Excel slowly, and some people went out and took some extra courses in Excel, and they leave the rest of us in the dust with what they can do because they really understand the tool. Yeah, we all have this basic knowledge. And I think it's easy to say, okay, I'll take a piece of software and I have the basic knowledge, but you're going to get, and I'm making up a number just for discussion, you're going to get a third out of it. You're going to get a half out of it. Well, that's okay, but you're still leaving a half on the floor. So what can you do to get that 80, 90, 100% efficiency out of that tool? And I think it's working with your vendor, whoever it is. Just from my own experience, we've done this with 600 different firms. You do learn a bit and you see what people did well and what they didn't do well. Yet we can then share that. So we can help steer you. Do we know everything about your firm? No, but the two of us dancing together can make a pretty good pair.
Yeah. And I think, what I've seen, and this is anecdotal, is that, when you're starting out, you're trying to pinch every penny, and something like services, it's really hard to digest. But then as you grow, and if you grow with the right, somewhat the right pricing, right packaging, you start to value speed, and you start to value just getting it done. And I see a big switch happen. It's probably around the $1 million mark, revenue mark, where it's like, and this is not just vendor related. It could be for consultants, it could be for coaching, it could be for people to build out marketing pipelines. It's like, well, I can go this speed on my own, but if I just hire a domain expert, we'll get up and running in insert time. Now the vendors might, overpromise, right, the time frame, or the coach might say, I'll get you the marketing funnel in 2 weeks. Maybe it takes 2 months, but could be a lot faster than you trying to learn the innards of SEO or Google AdWords or, whatever the vendor product is.
What's interesting there, that's where we were as a software company, call it 3 years ago. So we're a small company, 19, 20 employees, profitable, things are good, but we can only do so much. And we were getting the same. Our clients are saying, we want more. We want you to do this. We want you to do that. And we're going, we can't. And we were at what's the word? You get to the point where this is all that we could do as ourselves. Even the fact that we were self-funded, we grew through profits. We didn't have an injection of funds. Limitations are there. So we did exactly that thing. And we looked out and said, where's a firm that can bring us the expertise? Where's a firm that if we marry together with that firm, will take us further and we'll be able to augment them. Now, obviously, we'll augment them to a lesser degree, but what our customers needed and where we really just couldn't go, we needed somebody that had it that could take us there. which was the same as the firm who couldn't, they were only could do what they could do, but eventually couldn't do more themselves.
Yeah, and I won't dig into the details, but give us a little insider baseball. So, did you go out to the market? Did the market come to you? How did the transaction start? How did the relation start to build?
Actually, they first came to us, but we were at a stage where we've just felt we were hitting the ceiling. We kept bumping against the ceiling, and we knew we had to break through. And Iris came to us, and we said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! There's some good things here." This kind of the light bulb went on. This is how we're going to break through the service. So we were at the right time that when they approached, this is what we need. This is where we need to go.
Got it. Well, and so let's unpack the wells here, if you will. 2021. It certainly could be similar today, but just set the stage. What was Doc.It's value proposition, and what type of firm were you selling to? And then the marriage with Iris, what made so much sense about it? What's maybe one example where you said, "Oh my gosh, if we come together, we can then provide this." And audience disclosure, we're going to talk about this integration. I don't have a horse in the race here, right? So we'll dig into it, but I have no affiliation with whatever we're going to talk about here.
Sure. So we were, running about 500, 550 clients. Average size client was 30, 40, 50 users. We went anywhere from 3 users up to 600 users at that time. So there's always the taste. How do we get to the bigger clients? That's always we love it in the small group. We can do a lot of good work there, but how do you break in? How do we get into practice management software? We had workflow, but we know there's a limit to our workflow. You're a pure workflow, for example. You're going to have things that we don't have because you're a pure workflow. Well, we can't do that ourselves. So we needed somebody who had that and who could teach us a lot of things. We're going into cloud. Mm-hmm. We had a cloud offering coming. What did we really know about cloud security? What did we really know? Yet here's somebody who's already done it. And it was that, so we wanted to move into cloud. We wanted to get ourselves into a larger suite of products. We wanted to make all these advancements, which doing it yourself is not an easy route to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for context, when you say larger firms, where does that start for you? How do you slice it?
Yeah, not larger from where they would say the big four. I think that's quite our larger, but just meaning firms. We always talk it in terms of seats, how many employees. How do we get a lot more clients in that 100 plus? How do we start to break into the 300, 400, 500 employee firms? We had some, and most of it was because they had grown while they were our clients. They didn't start at 3 and become 600, but they were growing, and we were growing with them. But how do you get into that game?
Yeah. And so I'm curious to unpack a couple things. So you had a really nice kind of spectrum of accounts. Seems like obviously you've been, going up market, but I'm curious, we'll call it a 3-user firm. What are they coming to you for to solve? And is it, and how is it different than a 50-user firm?
I think a 3-user firm is saying, we know we need to be in this game. What can you do to help us in this game? We don't want to be left behind. And a lot of the smaller firms are really looking for, what can you guys bring to help me of your knowledge? Yes, we're going to bring knowledge to the 100-user firm. They have different resources. They have IT resources. They have multiple departments. They don't have one decision maker. They're venturing out into new business. They're doing 10 different streams of business, not 1 or 2 stream, maybe tax and bookkeeping, and what the small firms doing. So, they're wanting, different things with the software. They're wanting, what can you really do to make me efficient? Let's start to really go at the point. The 3-user wants to be more efficient, but they're probably just saying it globally. Help me be more efficient. It's a little finer tuned for the medium-sized firm in that 100 plus. They know what they want. They know where they're going. Help us to get there.
Yeah. So that medium firm just has the workflow, or what I'm hearing is a service line items become so much at scale that they're like, we want to solve the document workflow issues for this thing. And this one thing is going to give us the outsized impact too. And then we can take on the next use case and the next use case. Whereas somebody, 3, 4, 5 seats would be like, we're going to run across the whole firm. We want the solution across the whole firm. Is that fair to say?
I think usually they have a problem to solve in one of their work streams. Usually they want it across the board because you don't want to be using 5 different tools for the same thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's some basic table stakes that you've got to solve. You have to bring to the table, but they've got usually some specific problems they're trying to resolve. And it's there. It's in a business unit, or we're struggling because of X. We can't retain staff. We can't grow. As fast as we get people in, we're losing people. So we keep hitting that ceiling, which technology helps with.
Got it. And I'm going to ask this next question because I think we have, a number of listeners that are maybe, 10, 20 employees or less. And so I'd love to illuminate the high level decision makers or org structures of a 50-person firm. So for example, at, the 50 person or above, are you dealing with, partners plus a director of operations? Are you reaching, a director of IT that's internal? I guess, how are they building out their bench from a technology perspective at a 50, 60, 70 person company versus, 10 or under, you're talking with the partners essentially, I think on the sales. So who do they have on their team at 50 that you would typically interact with as they're going through vendor assessment?
They're going to have somebody from a technical standpoint. They've got, whether it's a CTO or whatever, there's somebody there who is their key technology person. They've probably got a well-entrenched office manager who does a lot of these coordinations. You may have an office manager in a smaller firm who does general coordination, but this person is running things for the partners. You get into a 10-user firm and the partner is the chief technology officer. He's the head, or she, they're the head of marketing. They're the head of everything, versus now they've got this bench. So oftentimes we may see even a technology partner initially. Obviously the decision becomes the partnership, but they involve a lot of people because they want buy-in. The buy-in in a small firm might just be that only the partner sees it and she says, great, this is what we're doing. May involve all their staff, but it's a much, much bigger group when you're that 50 plus firm.
It's fun. Sometimes you're up and coming, you dream about the days of getting your own CTO or CIO. And then you get there and you're like, well, I wish we could just move as fast as when we were 10 people. So there's no nirvana, but I did want to illuminate maybe the different roles and how the firm evolves as you grow. I'm curious though to shift, with a handful of questions before we wrap up here. What are you seeing on the horizon from a technology perspective? What's real? What's overhyped? I've been asking this question every year for the last, 100 years on the show. And, there was a time where we talked about technology that was called blockchain and crypto, and that, that was a boom and bust. It's still here, but not so much. So what are you seeing as some of the enduring trends for the profession on the horizon?
I think cloud is here now. 5 years ago, internet speeds were a problem. Programming ability, not programming abilities, but the languages, the tooling, all those things were still really just in their infancy. Cloud, the development is new, but I really think it's maturing now. All the infrastructure work around it, right? It's not one thing. It's all of them coming together. It's really there. I think AI, I can't tell you, here's 30 things that AI are going to do. And I don't think it's just going to be.
That's what Twitter's for. If you need answers, my goodness, go to Twitter. They'll give you 400 million ways to carve up AI.
Yes. No, but I think was inferred for what it can do in business analytics instead of, looking for unusual data.
Yeah.
Let it be found for you and then analyze unusual data. The day of trying to find what's unusual is so in the past. Yeah. I'm thinking like auditing, for example. You're auditing. In the good old days, we tried to find something unusual. And now you run a routine and it's telling you, and then you analyze that data. It's a different paradigm.
Yeah, I think that future is fast approaching, where the world in which, and I say this endearingly, being a vendor myself, dumb software is over and smart software will be here soon, where it's less of here's a pie chart. This is, you type in data, out spits a pie chart, versus, okay, we know the pie chart, but we're going to analyze it for you, and we're going to tell you predictively the next constraint in your firm. right? So whether it's a hiring decision or whether it's something technically in the audit or something else, insights will start to rise up. So it's a true, I think, companion for a lot of knowledge workers and a lot of people in the firm. They are getting insights versus having to dig through them in these different platforms. Well, Don, this has been a real treat. If people want to learn more, connect with you, learn more about Doc.It and how you can help, what is the best way for our audience to connect with you?
You can go to irisglobal.com website. Doc.It has its own website, but it's slowly going away as we're further and further integrated. Some very cool technologies coming out of our productive suite in the UK that we're branching onto some of those technologies with our cloud offerings. Very cool stuff, but irisglobal.com.
Irish Global, I love it. Well, if you're listening to this episode, you couldn't jot down all the notes, all the takeaways. We're going to link everything up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll do a full write-up of today's episode. We'll link out to what Don had mentioned. If you enjoyed today's interview, go ahead and leave a review. It helps us get the word out. And if you really loved it, if Don said something that was illuminating for you, share it with a fellow firm owner that needed to hear something. I know that's the best way to say thank you for Don for coming on, and it's the best way to kind of thank us for continuing to run the pod. Don, it's been a real treat. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you. On behalf of Iris Software, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining Growing Your Firm, the podcast series for global, small, and medium-sized businesses ready to scale and increase profits. You can check out more podcasts by following the links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. At Jetpack Workflow, we're all about maximizing returns for accounting firms and CPAs. Check out more podcasts on growing your firm and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.